Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much for this opportunity to speak today. My name is Matt Perkins. I'm and I'm going to talk a little bit today about some activities going, whereby we're investigating the efficacy of using design artificial lobster burrows. And this is work I'm doing with colleagues Tom Fairchild, already spoken to you today, and John Griffin, who unfortunately isn't today. So we've obviously already heard quite a bit about using eco-engineering in a changing world, so I'm not going to retread that path, but I will just reiterate a few of the same. Obviously, these are global underlying drivers here at work. Urbanisation, population growth, combined with climate change, means we are seeing an urbanisation of our seascapes. Consequently, that means, or crudely put, that means we're seeing a transition from softer sediment environments through to harder environments, often with a larger aggregate size. And that's happening at a considerable scale. Wind farms, of course, being a point in case, whereby they're already occupying significant areas, but this is likely to increase in the future. And of course, these have to be considered in regard to existing spatial use. Here, obviously in the UK, we have extensive fisheries. And of course, more recent times, designation of MPA areas. So how all these different spatial uses are prioritised is going to be something of a challenge and requires probably some solutions. One of which that is discussed quite heavily is this idea of multifunctional spaces, where simply you have coexistence of different spatial uses. And within, there's good support for this within the footprint of wind farms in order to be able to accommodate fisheries. Obviously, this will centre on species that are naturally at home on rocky environments and are therefore able to adapt to these hardened seabed novel habitats that we have. Of course, that includes here Cancer pagarus, the edible crab, Thomas gammarus, lobster. We know very little about their ecology within these novel farming environments. So our research focuses on the lobsters. They're a high-value catch and they support significant livelihoods. They also have an interesting aspects of their life history in that they use, dependent upon a burrow for refuge. Typically they forage at night time and return to their burrow during the day, but obviously the burrow is also important in their molting and shedding their skin in order to offer protection when their bodies are still soft from predators. And this provides an ecological engineering opportunity in order to build these kinds of burrows and deploy them into wind farms where we might be able to support enhanced populations of these dead, or indeed on other marine structures. But currently we know mixed thing about the burrow requirements of Homerus gammarus, including basic information like whether or not it even shows preferences for size and shape of its burrows. Field studies are also very scarce. This study by Langhammer Wilhelmsen in 2009 added some burrows to an experimental foundation, showed enhanced populations of crabs, but not for lobsters. It didn't discuss whether lobster population in the area was significant or not, so we don't know whether they were there and they avoided the structure or whether they simply weren't there. But we do know anecdotally that lobsters will use a range of stick habitats, so we're confident that artificial burrows can work. We've been working on a controlled laboratory experiment in which we've been testing whether or not lobsters will show preferences for different design aspects of burrows, and we reasoned that lobsters ought to select for burrows that would best fit their body shape, i.e. a snug fit. So we came up with three designs. First on the left has a wide aperture and a narrower chamber, and you can imagine here that the arms of the claws and the arms of the lobster, which are the widest part of the body, this would provide some manoeuvrability to defend itself, whilst the tighter length of the chamber snug around its body. Second design is a equal width along its length, and this acting as kind of a control really. If lobsters equally occupy this burrow, that suggests that body shape is not really important choices. And then the third design is essentially an inverse of the first design where you have a chamber. In addition to body shape, we also considered body size. We built these chambers at 2 again hypothesized that body size would be related to the chamber. So in order to conduct this experiment, we used big cylindrical tanks that are 1.5 meters across, a meter water depth, and 2 chambers at a time were introduced to each tank and a single lobster. The lobster is at liberty to wander around between the different burrows and around the tank, and we used videos to record over a 48-hour period time spent in each of the burrows and in the tank itself. And we used lobsters between 90 and 120 millimeter carapace length, which means legal landing size. Oh, I should just also add that for our analysis, we used an ELO system, which essentially ranks how these different units compare to one another. So we did most comparisons, but not all. But the ELO system allows you to, as long as you know that A has played against B and C has played against B, you can compare A to C. So these are quite provisional results. We've only recently got the data. The ELO score is on the y-axis. Essentially, the higher the score, the more burrow was utilised. You can see the burrow design. The numbers above is the average number of minutes the lobster spent in a particular burrow. This one highlighted in red, 127 minutes. And so that's essentially the time at any one time it spent in a burrow before it exited to do something else. Excuse me. We had some standout results actually from this data. First is simply that larger burrows were preferred, but we haven't yet built size of the lobster into our examine this to see if that result will stand, because it may be simply that our smallest lobsters were big enough to occupy the biggest burrows. But a more robust finding at this stage is, as we hypothesised, the wider aperture with smaller chamber was indeed preferred, considerably so over our less good design where you had a narrower. That's interesting for a second reason. Obviously, we're only testing 3 real burrow designs here, but it's interesting because it at least shows that lobsters actually do exhibit preferences. Who knew? They are fussy homeowners. And beyond that, we also found that this preferred burrow design also included longer period of time with the lobsters inside the burrow. It also corresponded to less time spent outside of the burrow in the tank, which we would consider to be a higher stress situation where they're searching a new burrow. And finally, just to add, in addition to our laboratory trials, we're now conducting field trials using those 4 laboratory burrows. We've translated those into concrete. I don't know if that's. And then we have essentially the large aperture, small chamber, and vice versa, and at 2 sizes. And we've deployed a number of these units around the south our coastline in Wales. And particularly, we're interested to understand whether lobsters will take up occupancy in these artificial burrows, given that they do also have the availability of natural habitats. And obviously, if they take up occupancy, we will then be testing what extent they show preferences. So our overall aim here is to bring together the lab study and the field trial to publish a paper that will lay down some foundational evidence about lobster show towards burrow design. We would suggest that in future, research might do well to target prototypes of these sorts of units, but maybe in situ within to enhance lobster populations in such environments. So thanks very much for listening.